All right, welcome everybody to the Leadership Mastermind Podcast. I am your host, Mitch Peak, and this is my co-host, Laura Brandeo. Hello, Laura.
Hello, Mitch. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Yourself?
Wonderful. Well, we have a fabulous guest with us today, and I'd love and LOs by providing sales coaching, leadership coaching, and business development. He started and sold 2 different mortgage companies, built high-producing teams, and sold his personal database before moving into coaching full-time. His goal is to empower the team to serve more clients, communities, and business partners at a higher level and to work together to achieve everyone's goals. He is the founder of Personal Branding Mastery Seminars, where he has taught over 250,000 agents how to build their personal brand. He also founded Agent Marketing Academy, where he is taught monthly to agents across the country. Agent Marketing Playbook and a current subscription of over 16,000 agents and the Origination Guide Podcast. Well, Tim, we are thrilled to have you here today. And on the Leadership Mastermind Podcast, we want to provide our audience with insights and perspectives from our industry experts so they can learn, grow, and be inspired to be a leader to their clients and their teams. All right, Mitch, can't wait to hear Tim's insights.
All right. Good morning, Tim. How are you?
Hey, guys. I don't know how I'm going to live up to that bio, but we'll figure it out.
Now we're really waiting to hear from you, Tim.
We have, during this podcast, Tim, we've definitely found Laura her calling in life since we started this podcast as an introduction specialist.
Yeah, that's probably all we need. You guys have a great day. I'll jump off now. I don't want to ruin it now that we've said all that.
Got it. We already got it to the plateau.
we hit the pinnacle. Anything else could go downhill, so might as well stop over our head.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I'll tell you what. We'll jump right in and ask you the big question. What are your 3 key pillars to leadership?
It's a really good question. I think, number one, you can't lead others unless you can lead yourself. That's pillar number one. So if you're not investing in yourself and your personal growth on a regular basis, you've got nothing to give anybody else. So you've got to be always on the pursuit of a better version of you, right? To pursuing your higher calling, pursuing who you are and how to develop your greatest gifts and talents so that you can give those away. So that's pillar number one. If you don't start there, I don't think anything else comes together in the situation. From there, I think you've got to have a deep concern for the benefit of others. So if all you do is grow yourself to never grow anybody else, that's very one-dimensional leadership. I mean, what are you going to do? Just sit at the top of the hill and sort of look down? I think pillar number 2 is you've got to have a concern to help others grow along the way. And then pillar number 3 would be you have to personalize the leadership. I will say this, like if I can only teach one lesson on leadership, it's the common problem that I see in churches, in schools, in business, in our industry. And this is the number one problem that I see all the time is we tend to, and I'm guilty of this too, I have to stop myself on this, but we are all guilty of trying to lead other people the way we like to be led. So if I'll give you some examples. If we are a very driven, kind of high energy type of personality, and we're very systematic, then we try to teach and lead others to be the exact same way. And every time we do that, we run the risk of missing the mark. And maybe putting an etch on somebody that didn't need to be there. So if you lead yourself and grow yourself, and then you have a heart for leading others, you have to then, pillar number 3, personalize that leadership. So, I coach over 80 loan officers right now. We have over 700 in our program. And every one of them, the way we set it up was individual one-on-one coaching, personalized coaching. Because the way this person develops and sees the world is different from the way this person develops and sees the world. And if we try to treat them the same, one person might feel left behind or unworthy or get into that whole comparison trap. But if we treat them as individuals and we raise their self-awareness and get them to grow, they reach their highest potential and calling. So that, to me, those are the three pillars. And the biggest one is that miss that people do all the time.
Those are excellent. And let's start to dive into a few of those. Okay. Starting with you, who was it? Was it Jim Rohn that said that you should be investing in yourself and doing self-improvement and self-growth more than anything else? So totally agree with you that it starts with you and knowing yourself, right? Actually taking that time to have that inner reflection and understanding your strengths and weaknesses, right? Because we all know we may be masters at one thing, but not at another. And that starts with you. Again, what you said in number 2, excellent point about once you understand yourself, then it's giving back to others and lifting them up and being there for them.
Right.
And then the personalization. This is something that I think you learn in time, because I think when you first start out, you think everyone should achieve exactly like you. Well, why aren't they acting like this? Or why aren't they following up this way? Or why aren't they approaching it this in another manner? But you are correct. Every individual has to be customized and personalized, and you should never compare how someone else works to you, because every single individual is different.
Right.
But I find that people struggle with that in the beginnings of their career. I think that's something that they have to lean into. So what are your thoughts on there? What has been your examples and what has been your experience in terms of that it's not all one size fits all?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, you have to go out there and skin your knee and realize that your pattern isn't really producing the results that you're after.
True.
I did that a number of times in my career. Yeah. Listen, I learned the hard way that if you kick a wall, your foot will go through it because it's drywall and it's not meant to be kicked. And at the same time, that really doesn't lead to a healthy office environment either. People get a little bit intimidated when they see you kicking the wall or knocking over the bubblegum machine or throwing paper towels down the hallway, all from personal experience.
I think I've seen that in some of my offices too.
Yeah. And so I used to have a saying, if you would just act and be like me, we'd all have a better relationship. But what occurred to me was I kept hitting a brick wall, right? And the results that I was after, I wasn't getting, and I'm the perfect example of trying to lead others the way I wanted to be led. When I got my wife to come into the mortgage business, it's because she hated her job. She complained about it every night. I'm like, well, I could use some help. So why don't you come over and help me? And what I told her was the very first day on the job, I said, here's the Calyx handbook manual. You need to read it, figure out how to use the program, because I don't know how to use it.
Oh, no.
And so I said, that's one of your assignments. And I said, then this is the card for one of my account reps, because at the time I was a mortgage broker and we sold a lot to different people. And I said, this is my favorite account rep. You can talk to him, but everybody else, you just answer the phone and take a message. Don't you even try to give any advice on anything at all, ever. That's the worst thing you could ever do. This whole thing revolves around me. I started it. I'm the best. So you just shut up and answer the phone and give me the message. That is poor leadership.
I was going to say, Tim, not only is it poor leadership, but boy, your wife must have been angry at you.
Well, she knows me well enough to know she wasn't going to listen to a word I said.
Ah, there you go.
And she was going to do things her own way. But you're right, is that we too tend to do that, and it doesn't end up getting the results that we want. And then hopefully we have a wake-up call sooner rather than later. I can't tell you that I've been doing this 20 plus years, and I've seen so many teams dissolve because of a leadership issue. It's not a scripting issue. It's not a systems issue. It's not a marketing issue. It's a leadership issue. And we don't teach leadership in the mortgage business. You know what conferences? No. You know what conferences people go to? How to get another loan, how to market your business, how to
where the rates are going, what's happening in the future. Yep, exactly.
Absolutely. Right. But we don't have leadership conferences. And I think even if somebody put one on, only the best of the best would show up, because most people are like, I don't need that. They do what I tell them to do, and I'm a good leader. Or I've got this title, and I'm a good leader, or whatever. And so you're 100% right. We have to have a wake-up call. Sometimes it happens for people. Sometimes it doesn't happen for people. I can give you
what the problem is in our industry is, think about it, Tim, right? You could be extremely successful. You could make tons of income, right? And you could move up along with poor leadership skills.
Oh, yeah.
We are in an industry that you technically are rewarded for the ability to, maybe you're great at relationships with referral partners, or maybe, yes, you are really good at working that database, right? And so all of a sudden you're moved along, you're going up the chain, but you actually are not a good leader. You might be a great salesperson. You might actually, right? So I think you absolutely nailed it right there, where you said, in our industry, you're right. That is, even if we provided it, I don't think people would recognize that they needed it.
You're 100% right, because what we do in our industry is we reward production.
Right.
We reward production with awards. We reward production with accolades, with trips, with cash, all that kind of stuff. And so people tend to do what they're rewarded for.
Of course.
Right.
That's human nature.
It is human nature. And so they go, see, look at my numbers, right? But I can tell you, in 20 years, I've known people with great numbers that can't keep a loan officer assistant more than 6 months.
Me too.
And they usually tell me it was them. It wasn't me.
It's always them.
It's always the other person. And I remember before, when I had my private coaching practice before working for Movement full time, I had an individual, a stellar individual, had unbelievable leadership potential, but had personally capped it so low that they had gone through 15 assistants. Wow. And they kept saying, I've got to find an assistant, and I said, well, you found 15. Right. And so what nobody's ever been willing to tell you, that I'm unafraid to say to you, is you're the worst leader I've ever met in my entire life. I wouldn't follow you to the water fountain to get a drink if I was dying of thirst.
And how was that received? I'm just curious.
The eyes went like this. How dare you talk to me that way? And I said, well, listen, I'm not going to pat you on the rear end because you did this production. I could care less about the production. What I care about is the fact that your reputation in the community has dropped so low amongst assistants, we can't find you anybody. They all talk.
Right. That makes sense.
God, don't go work there, And so here's another side note to that, is typically because we're rewarded with money, right, as a loan officer, like you try to negotiate your BIPs, you try to negotiate your sign-on bonus, it's all money, 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 money. We tend to hire people based on money. Well, I'll get a better person if I give them more money. That's not true. That is not true. My wife worked at an organization, made a lot of money, left the organization for a third less money to get away from poor leadership.
Right.
Right. Well, I like I want to go back to number 3, personalized leadership, because it kind of reminds me of that. I think it was Albert Einstein that said, everybody's a genius, but if you judge a fish based on his ability to climb a tree, he's going to think that he's stupid. So, that brings me to what you're saying, personalized leadership. So how did you discover that that's the way you like to teach leadership?
It's a lifetime process. I got to the point in my career where I was incredibly frustrated. We were successful by all the metrics we just talked about, but we were unsuccessful in my eyes because I could not do more. I couldn't get my team to do more, and that was frustrating me. And throwing paper towels down the hallway wasn't solving the problem. And I was like, how do we do this? And I kept teaching certain strategies, and I was like, they're not getting it. So I hired a coach. That had the nerve to tell me the truth. And my first coach was Susan Depew, and she told me the truth. She said, it's you. It's not them. You're a bad leader. And I'm like, well, what's leadership got to do with this? She said, it's got everything to do with it. She goes, your skills are great. I mean, you can go into a room and come out with a loan application. That's not in question. It's your ability to lead this team that is a complete disaster. And that's why you're always having last minute file problems. That's why you're always having blood pressure jumps up and down and all that kind of stuff. So she sat me down and she said, we're going to do a DISC personality report on you. And then we're going to do that for every one of your team. And we're first step is you.
That is very smart.
The very first step is we got to get your self-awareness up, because you think you hung the moon. And I'm like, I did. It was super easy. And she said,
you're a high DI.
Yes. Yeah. With a high economic drive on top of it. So she took me through that process, and then I gave it to my team. And I realized I had a loan officer that I was trying to make into something he wasn't. And so I went to him and I said, hey, man, do you like networking? He said, hate it. I was like, well, that's why you never go. And I get mad at you all the time. He goes, well, it's no fun. So I literally moved him into an assistant role without a job description, without anybody showing me the ropes on it. And I said, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you just run my estimates? Why don't you talk to my customers after I get them sold and things like that? And he's like, man, that would be awesome. And he went from his loan officer pay to just assistant pay, stayed with me through selling my company, and even went to the company we sold the company to, because we put him in the right seats on the bus. And so to me, it was my encounter with Susan and her willingness to be unafraid to tell me the truth that nobody else was willing to tell me. Everybody else just wanted to, give me an award or pat me on the back or tell me how great I was. And she was there to tell me I wasn't as great as I thought. And that was a real eye opener, and I listened. So that was for me a big turning point.
Well, I see why you like to be a coach, because I'm starting to understand that you get paid to tell people the truth.
Well, yeah. I mean, the worst thing you can do is know something instinctively and be afraid to tell somebody the truth because of how they might react, or they might not want to do business with you or whatever. I mean, that's the worst place you can be in life. You've got to learn to tell people the truth, or otherwise suffer quietly in your own misery of the damaged relationship because you're not talking truth.
Right. And it's like sports. You go back to sports when your kids are in sports or you were in sports, and you hear, the coach yelling at the kid, and some parents are like, they yelled at my kid. I'm like, that's their job. Like, they're building up the kid. They're coaching them,
Mm-hmm.
and when you get older, it doesn't change. I mean, you have to have somebody to tell it to you straight, and tell, somebody to get after you when you're not doing it the way you should be.
Yeah, and actually tell you the truth enough to get you out of a situation you're not good in.
Yeah.
How about that? How about just saying, I know that you want to be in this business. I know you've tried to be in this business. Here's the truth. You're not good at this business.
Right.
And maybe finding a different path for you in life will save you some frustration. Certainly will save your leadership some frustration. So, I mean, Susan, for me, was a big change, and that DISC report is the center of everything I did.
Me too. I do exactly the same thing in my company. But when we hire someone, I make sure that their DISC fits the position that they're actually going to be put in. So totally agree with you.
Yep.
And, going back to being truthful and honest with someone, I think that's like your number 2 with having a concern for others. People think that being honest and telling someone the truth about, something that you want to coach them on, that actually takes care. That's not having, where you don't care for someone. That actually is a connection with someone. So I think that actually shows care to someone. So I love that. And then my second question, my question I want to ask here, you mentioned about people within our industry, right? I want to focus in especially on originators. If you've been in this industry for 20 years, and I've been in this industry for over 20 years, we've seen the excitement of coming into our industry. We've seen that initial fire in the belly, but we all know as cycles change and disruption happens, all of a sudden that excitement dwindles. How do you keep people with their head in the game and still feeling that fire of helping families and being part of the team?
Well, it goes back to the DISC report. It really does. Like, you got to know what your purpose is. Some people in this industry, their purpose is just to conquer. Their DISC report is a conquering DISC report, right? And they're just going to conquer and conquer and conquer and conquer, so to speak, right? It's just win, 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 win. And that thrill keeps them in the game. In fact, we're going to experience a shift somewhere in the middle of April. You just mark my words. Loan officers across the country are going to wake up and go, I've got 85 people and no closings because there's no inventory. It's going to happen. It's going to happen rapidly. And you're going to see a lot of concern from people, right? People will try to change companies because they think that will be the solution, right? And that won't be the solution because, again, everything starts and ends with the person that watches you brush your teeth. And so, but it's going to hit, and it's going to hit pretty hard. And we've been talking about it for a number of weeks because I try to prep people like, hey, there's a hurricane coming, and some people don't board up their doors. That being said, I think it's just when we talk about the leadership area in mortgages and helping people get in the right place on the bus. Okay. I've never been, if I don't talk to you, it's because I don't like you. That's just the bottom line. If I talk to you and I give you a truth, it's because I truly care.
Right.
It's because I truly care, because I see something there that could be better. But to your point about how do you keep people motivated, if you don't know 2 levels of the DISC report, 2 minimum. If all you rely on are the letters, you will miss their motivation. And so most people don't know the DISC report actually has 3 levels to it. All right. And so the first 2 levels of DISC are the letters on how you make a decision, and then the values, why you make the decision you make. And if you don't get into the why, it's not just like and Simon's book, Start With Why, and see people, hey, what's your why? Well, it's my family, it's my kids, it's this. To me, it's also layered into the value section of your DISC report. And you have to really dive deep to understand that. Some people are motivated by serving. So the way we coach them up is like, hey, times maybe get tough. Here's your opportunity to serve more. So by making calls, you're actually serving people, right? And so you have to translate it to their why of serving. For other people, it's like, hey, you can dominate now. Making calls, you win more. So when I talk about that third pillar of getting deep and personalizing it, it's not only knowing how somebody makes decisions and why they make the decisions, it's also using language that matters to them. Okay? So I'll use my DISC profile as an example, right? The person you can always pick on is me. I'm totally, I would never pick on anybody else, but I'll pick on myself. I'm a 99D, a 99I with a 99 economic drive and a 17 altruist drive. Mm-hmm. All right. So this is how I process decisions, right? Can I make it quickly? Is there a relationship involved? Do we have a chance to compete or win? And low on my list is the serving part. Now that sounds terrible. People are like, oh my gosh, you're not a server. I serve people by helping the team win. Okay. Whereas other people serve the team by doing stuff for the team, right? Getting your jacket or making the phone call or stuff like that. So if you're trying to lead me and you say, I'll give you an example from my church life. We're heavily involved in the church. And so they would come out with missions, right? And they would say, hey, listen, we're going to serve this community this weekend and we're going to trim the bushes and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. And at the time, people got, what's wrong with you? And here's what it was. My mind was processing it so quickly. It was like, if I go work this weekend, I can give you more money and I'll give you some of that money to buy more trees. Right. I'm just not planting the trees.
Right.
But if you had me out there trimming bushes and planting trees, all I'm thinking about is I could have given more by earning more. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I mean by getting personal, right? And that can create a lot of conflict if you don't understand where the other person's coming from. Yep. So when you're trying to lead somebody, if you know their motivation, you have to use the words that motivate them. So if you're talking to me and you say, well, I'll give you an example. We went on a retreat a few years ago, and there was this contest, and all they had to do was say the word contest. At that point, I'm thinking, how do we win this thing? Right? What rules can be gray areas is what's going on in my mind. You know what I'm saying? And so we won the contest, right? I got to pick my teammate. I was like, not you, but you, right? And so because it was all, so if you don't use the right language when you're leading people, or you try to universally use some language and you've got 10 people underneath you and they all have different languages that they respond to, you're going to miss the mark and be frustrated as a leader. So how you keep them motivated is you do that. And I'll give you one more tip. If you know their love language, sorry. Man, there are thunderstorms like crazy in Nashville. Hey, baby girl, come here. I'm so sorry. It's real.
It is. They're famous. Hey, these dogs are just as famous, if not more famous.
Oh, God. Now, let me tell you how do you lead German Shepherds. You put a collar on them and you hit a button. And that's how you lead German Shepherds.
We need a thunder shirt.
Yeah. It thundered, it lightning, somebody came to my door.
Oh, you had the trifecta.
And I lost my train of thought.
Motivating. We were speaking about motivating the team.
Yeah.
Their love language.
Their love language. Okay. So if you're leading a team right now, just talk to leaders out there. If you want to lead a team, number one, get the disc report on the team and stop trying to fit the square peg in the round hole. Okay. Don't try to make them something they're not. If you get the disc report and their detail score is 14 like mine, don't give them underwriting or LOA issues. They're never going to be good no matter how many classes you send to them. And if they're a DI like me, stop sending me to the loan application class to take better applications. I'm just worried if I got a social security number and a credit report.
Just put you to execute and to get production.
That's right. That's right. Just give me a leaderboard and who's at top and I'll take them down.
And you're going to get higher.
That's we had an event yesterday and one of the speakers was Marty Rodriguez, and she's like one of the, number one realtors in the country for forever. She's 70 years old, and she said, when she built her business, she hated being a manager. So she's like, I just want to sell. So I put my daughter in charge of management. So she runs our company, and she said, I'm 70 years old. I still just sell. That's what I do. So she knows, as the leadership wasn't hers. It was just get her in front of people, build relationships, and sell. That's what she wanted.
But that's great leadership.
Great leadership
of yourself and great leadership for her team is that there is nothing wrong with recognizing, hey, I know what I'm really good at, and just give me the bulk of my day to focus in on that. And that's why you have a team and you put those right people. And the problem is, and Tim, it's actually interesting. Like in my company, when I was structuring a new department, I had a team of recent college graduates, and I realized they didn't want commission. They literally wanted just the regular salary, a higher salary, but they wanted a guarantee. They did not want any fluctuation at all. Now, they could have made a lot more if they had gone on the other way, but not for them.
But that's not the motivation. So
that's exactly right. And but for us, we're thinking, what are you, crazy? You wouldn't want to have the opportunity but for them,
that's right. That's where you got to separate how you see it from how they see it. There's a website called appreciationatwork.com. I assign it to people all the time. I'm like, go to appreciationatwork.com, pay the $20, get your love languages at work. And it will tell you what your motivation at work is.
Cool.
And so I'll give you a great example in the mortgage world. I had a transaction coordinator that my natural instinct was to pay him more to get more. Because if you pay me more, you get more. That's how I work. Right? So I thought, I'll pay him more and I'll get more. That didn't work. All it did was cost me more money. Gave him the assessment, found out his number one motivating love language was quality time. Here's what that meant. He wanted time off more than he wanted money. I'm like, time off? I don't even know what that is. I think I gave back 200 vacation hours last year at Movement. So, I gave him that. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to reset your goals for the week. So if you hit all your goals by Thursday, you get a half a day off on Friday, all pay. It doesn't count against your vacation.
Yep.
At noon, I don't want to ever see, I want you out of here, gone. And his productivity skyrocketed.
That's awesome.
So appreciationatwork.com combined with the DISC report and your willingness to love and value people and to get in there and get your hands dirty with them one-on-one, to me, that's what we've done at Movement. That's how we built our coaching department at Movement. And it takes a lot of bandwidth to do that, but you get the rewards on the other side. So that's what I would say as a tip.
Nick,
Love it.
I want to keep hearing, but I think we're out of time with Tim's schedule.
It was the dogs blew. I'll give you 5 more minutes because the dogs blew it up for
All
us.
right, go ahead, Mitch. I'll let you go.
Awesome. Well, I just would like to hear, I know the audience would like to hear a little bit about your background, how you got into the mortgage business. So let's go there.
So I'm a kid from the housing projects. My mom was a drug addict. We lived month to month. My dad passed away when I was only 3. So there wasn't a lot of role models at that time in my life. And I had a high school counselor who said, you should go to college. I'm like, you don't understand. I'm not an academic. So by God's grace, we found a way to get me into college. But I had to get 3 jobs. And so, I went to college. It was a great experience. After college, I answered an ad. I was going to be a graphic designer. That's what I was going to do in my life. And I answered this ad and went on the interview, and it turned out to be a job placement service. They placed me at a finance company. Okay. And listen, I said, I'm the worst guy you can have at a finance company. Like, I tried to float checks to my next payday to buy groceries. I don't think I need to be at a, they're like, you can do this. So I started making basically like payday loans. So I was loaning people money at like 28% interest, and I'd take your couch as collateral. And if you didn't pay me, we'd just show up at the door and knock, like, hey, Mitch, I need my $40 or the couch. Which one's it going to be? Anyway, so I did that job, and I networked. I knew the power of networking, and I met a guy named Chad, and he was the branch manager at another, the same company, but a different location in town. He quit one day and went to work in the mortgage business. And he was in the mortgage business about 6 months, and he called me up and he's like, hey, how's that $24,000 a year management job working out for you? I said, it sucks. I hate it, man. I'm repoing cars and couches, and this is terrible. And he's like, you should come get in the mortgage business. And I'm like, dude, I'm renting in an efficiency apartment. The furniture isn't even mine. Like, what are you talking about? He's like, you got to come down here. He goes, I made $130,000. And I'm like, I didn't even hang up the phone. I just got in my car and drove over, right? and so I showed up, and Michael Brown was my mentor at that place. And it was like, we got leads every day. It was like the Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross leads. And that speaks to my DISC profile, by the way. But so I show up, and he said, do you think you can do this job? I'm like, absolutely. Like, I can do it. I had no clue of what I was doing. None, right? I just like, yeah, absolutely. So I sold myself to them. They gave me the job. And I just learned it on the fly, literally just learned it on the fly. And that's how I got in the mortgage business. And a year into it, my wife swore I was selling drugs because we've been used to living on $24,000 a year. And now we were living on $24,000 a month. And she's like, what are you doing all day? And I'm like, I'm doing these loans, man. It's just crazy. So that's how I got my start in the business. And the business is seasonal. The leads started to dry up, and I had to find a new way. And I was like, man, I need referral sources. And so I kind of got into the brokering aspect of it. And from there, a buddy called me one day. His business was in the toilet. I mean, they were losing money left and right. He's like, I'll give you equity to as a partner to come help us. And I said yes, because looking back on it, I got equity of nothing. He's making no money. But I said yes. And we went in there and we turned that business around in a year, a little over a year. We sold it back for a profit. I took the money from that, opened up my own shop, ran that shop for a number of years, sold that shop, or actually partnered. I had a guy buy into it because I was starting to coach a little bit at the time. We ran that for another couple of years. Right before 2008, we were like, man, things are changing out here. Maybe selling now is a good idea. And we were running a podcast back at the time. This was when podcasts, you had to dial in a phone and talk about. It was Blog Talk Radio. So we were running this podcast called The Originators Guide on Blog Talk Radio, and Bank of America had been listening to it. And they called one day and they were like, "Hey, are you interested in selling?" I was like, "Hell yeah, I'm interested in selling." And so we sold the company and went to Bank of America. But my greatest thing about that was our whole team went through with us every transition. You know, I never dealt with this constant, like, trying to rehire people and retrain them, because Susan helped me understand, put people in the right seats, reward them the way they want to be rewarded, speak to them the way they want to be spoken to. And so they stayed with us that whole time. And that, to me, it was bigger than any number of loans we made. But that's the story of how I got in the game.
That's a great story. And it was like 5 minutes long.
Look at that.
There you go, right?
Perfection. Well, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, Tim. And I'm going to let Laura take it so she can ask you how people can get a hold of you.
Yeah. So, Tim, we do certainly want to know, how can others follow you, learn more about? I mean, obviously, this has been extremely valuable, and love the insight. And really, you know, you just said it. The team that you have is the greatest asset, because we all know having that longevity and not having to start over again and having that supportive team, that honestly is what makes us successful. Mm-hmm. So how can people connect with you?
You can go to iTunes. You can listen to the Originators Guide podcast. I'm a lot shorter than other podcasts. I keep trying to keep my podcast under 3 minutes long.
Oh, wow.
So it's like a tip a day or a tip every other day. So the Originators Guide podcast, you can listen to me there. Social media, I mean, Mitch knows, you know, if you want to look at German Shepherds, come to Facebook, you'll find my page. You'll see a lot of posts about my dogs and some other leadership tips and things like that. And if you really want to reach out to me, you can email me. It's tim.davis@movement.com.
Awesome.
And I'm a big fan of the podcast. You know, 3-minute tidbits are great, and they're always inspirational. So definitely follow Tim and check out his podcast.
I appreciate you guys having me. Sorry I'm short on time. And I definitely apologize for the Shepherds. I mean, I can say this much. We're fully protected at the Davis household. Nobody's coming in the door. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, they'll be turning around real quick if they are.
Right. Thanks so much for having me, guys. It's good to see you. We'll do it again soon, okay?
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Tim.
Bye.